Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. I'm here with Antony Gormley, which I'm very happy about. He is Britain's best-known living sculptor, whose forms and bodies dot the country, standing with wings spread, peering out to sea, upright in the lobbies of corporations, perched high up on parapets in public spaces, half buried, lying down, just inscrutably there, in parklands around stately homes or in the galleries and gardens of museums. These stripped-down bodies are not all he does, but perhaps the most famous instances of his work, representations of human existence, community, our likeness to one another, the perseverance and survival of humans in both nature and amidst harsh urban realities. Antony studied archaeology and anthropology at the University of Cambridge, spent several subsequent years in India, and thought about becoming a Buddhist monk before turning to sculpture. His first years were difficult, but in 1994 he won the Turner Prize for Field for the British Isles, an installation of 40,000 hand-sized clay figures with upturned eyes that were made by people he invited into his studio, whom he asked to form a lump of clay into a rudimentary head and then give it eyes with a pencil. 4 years later came Angel of the North, a towering figure in northeastern England at Gateshead, and another place, 100 cast iron figures created from his own body on a beach in Merseyside, perhaps the country's best-known modern landmarks. Antony, thank you for being here with us today. And I want to start with a question you put to me sort of in passing yesterday, a huge question. What is sculpture good for?
Well, first of all, I think that what's happening here, which is really a dialogue between the majority world and those of us privileged to have, in a way, the technology that allows us to exploit the resources of the world. I feel sad that a forum like this has so few representatives, as it were, from that majority world. The tickets are expensive. The place is impressive. I think many of those that we should be listening to would feel frightened about even entering this palazzo of culture. I wanted to start with these images, really, of collaboration. I grew up with the idea that artists remade the world on their own terms, in their own studios, in their own time, and made unique works that would then end up, luckily, in important museums or private collections. But I have come to realize the inherent untruth of that notion of what art is. Art is a form of communication. I don't have a choice about what I do. Art is the way that life expresses itself. And for most of its history, before it was institutionalized and commodified, it was made with, for, and by everyone. The dances we danced, the songs we sang, the stories we told were done intra-communally. So these first slides are an example of me realizing at a certain point in my, I hate that word, career, because it's not a career, it's a vocation. I didn't have a choice in the end. I mean, I didn't know when I was growing up if I had either the talent or the ability to be an artist. But in the end, I realized that that was all I could be. But I wanted, with these works, to show you the necessary reply to that cultural kind of conditioning, which was really my inheritance from the 20th century, where art, in a way, removed itself from the power of patronage and the service of power to something else, which was, in a way, the celebration of the individual. And I still love those pioneers, the work of Brancusi, of Giacometti, even of Picasso. But it is a kind of block to the truth of what art has been in terms of its real long history. If we go to Peshmerga, or you go to Font de Gaume, or if you go to, any of the caves, the Maros caves in Sulawesi, or to the Kimberley in northwestern Australia, what do you find? You find art. Art made on walls, art made in collective shelters that are an expression of our lives in relation to life at large. When in the Paleolithic we were growing as communities, and we were the tiniest community of living beings, and we loved and killed those far more numerous herds and flocks and shoals that gave us life. And we bore witness to our love and our responsibility for those creatures by celebrating them in images in the caves and rock shelters all over the world. These were open spaces that anybody could visit. You can think of European cathedrals, or indeed the temples of India, or the temples of anywhere in Southeast Asia, and here are equally locations in which the collective nature of the generation, celebration, and continuation of art are so powerfully expressed. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting into a kind of sermon mode, and that's dangerous. I just wanted to say, I wanted to share with you my attempts. So here we have Central Australia, working with the Wangata and the Wonga tribes, trying to do some form of reverse anthropology where, in a context of massive extraction, Western Australia provides 23% of the GDP of Australia as a whole. It comes from an extractive economy that is based on mining. I wanted to think, how can we take these same materials, iridium, vanadium, titanium, iron ore, make a concentration of that, make a concentration of the attitude of the people that live there, both the colonizers and the colonized, and put those things back in the landscape rather than taking them away to make products for the hegemonic culture. We received the dreaming from the elders of both tribes. We were allowed to go into this extraordinary landscape. Lake Ballard, 11 square kilometers of sodium lake. When you walk on it, it's like walking on the crust, on the surface of a drum. Every footstep resounds. The pieces are maybe between 500 and 700 meters apart. You have to walk. You, as the visitor, become the connecting principle between Lorraine, a Wangata lady of maybe 45, and her cousin Jaden, that may be 2 kilometers away. As you go, you leave a trace. The whole of the field is possible to be witnessed from the top of Snake Mound. The whole of this site is connected with the Pleiades, with the Seven Sisters, with the dreaming of the Seven Sisters, and indeed the origination myths of this tribe. It was an extraordinary privilege to work with these people who have been displaced and replaced by cattle and horses, and to, in a way, ask them to bear witness to their own history and to make something that in some senses is it's a reality check of where we are in terms of hominid development. I've made other things, and this is the opposite, you could say. Here is something made with the industrial complex. This is made by a pylon maker in Scotland for a new town, Lelystad, on the Inselmeer, a recovered land taken from the North Sea. I wanted to make something that in some senses talks about our relationship with the earth, with the ground, but also this new land. This work is essentially seen from a kilometer away. And to play with scale, but to play also with this common language. We all know pylons. They all, as it were, dot the world as it energizes itself. But using it in a reflexive way. Anyway, sorry, Roslyn, I've gone off on one. But I guess the thing that I wanted to talk about was, in a way, the antithesis of the lone artist in their own studio, making their own versions of the world in their own time, and talk about collaboration and the absolute joy of working together, of having the privilege of, in a way, finding out about new ways of being and doing, new long stories of relationship with material.
Well, while you were talking, I was actually wondering whether there was also a way in which these communal relationships are also a way to engender art, engender creativity outside of your own head, as it were. Things can happen to allow things to happen that you may not have conceived.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the thing. You go maybe with an idea, with a thought, with a possibility, but then you meet maybe the material, but along with the material, I tried to say a bit about this yesterday, along with the material comes a whole history of relationships, often through multiple generations of working with that material. And it is as true for the pylon makers of Stirling. This is about an hour and a half out of Edinburgh North, as it is for the shipbuilders of the Tyne, or indeed the Texca family that we started the slides with. That was Donna Pasquala had 22 children, and 14 of her children, with their partners, worked with me to make the first field.
In Mexico?
And this was in the plain of Cholula, where that was an unbelievably moving thing, where we would dig the clay from the ground, and in it we would find little images of Huitzilopochtli or Xixitopec, and yet out of that same clay we were trying to make another, in a way, image of the collective body. But in every place, I mean, that family, the Texca family, they had been, 2 generations back, they had been farmers. But in order to survive, they had to turn to being brickmakers. And providing the raw material really for the megalopolis of the ever-growing truth of Mexico City. And that was an amazing thing. I learned a lot from them, not just about the clay, but also about family relations, about... Donna Pasquala was incredible. She would get up every morning at 4:30 to begin to make the tortillas that we would all eat when we had our break at lunchtime. And there was it was really strange because on the one hand, it was a whole other way of being, thinking, doing, but also being in the studio. I realized that I love my studio. I couldn't exist without it. But at the same time, I'm aware that in a sense, the whole world is a studio. And no material comes without its history of human engagement and the communities of interest that surround it. And indeed, the communities of skill and competence that surround that material.
Antony, in a way, your interest in working in the world, as it were, also extends to working with other disciplines, particularly dance. And I wondered if you would, not all artists are open to that because it involves a kind of collaboration and giving over of control to some extent. But you have been particularly involved in two wonderful productions with Akram Khan and Sidi Labi Chakawi, and I think you have another Chakawi project in the offing. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what that has brought to your practice and why it interests you and the role of dance for you and the way it relates to your use of the body. I'm sorry, there's about 4 questions.
Put simply, Roslyn, for me, dance is the most direct art form we have. Using existence itself to celebrate existence, using the inherent intelligence of the body in time to make something that communicates firsthand, body to body, through interaction with space. So for me, dance has been an enormous. I mean, when I was at university, I joined the Contemporary Dance Society. We would have 1 or 2 classes every week. I'm a bit long and gangly for being a dancer, but I just loved it. That feeling of mutuality that maybe I've been talking about is so evident in the collective engagement of a troupe of dancers. And I've been very, very privileged to work with dancers because they understand, intuitively, they understand the interconnectivity, the physical interconnectivity of making a work that is itself unbelievably fugitive. And you can see the same dance maybe performed on 2 nights consecutively, and it's a different dance every time it is originated. So it is new. It's a new thing. And for me, that is an inspiration and an example that is, dancers on the whole, retire by the age of 40. The training to be a dancer, particularly a ballet dancer, that I have some problems with, in a way, the history of classical ballet. I mean, it comes from power relations that I feel uncomfortable about. However, the development of dance in our time, which really starts with Martha Graham and Merce Cunningham, but then develops into the Ballet Frankfurt and the extraordinary range of works. And I've been, very, very privileged to work with Sidi Labi and Akram.
And did those experiences make a difference to you as a creator? Did they change the way you work? Did they affect an evolution in your work?
I think, doesn't all our encounters, in a way, affect the way we are? And certainly if you work with somebody, it is like you've shared a mind. And that's why I'm so passionate about collaboration, because it's this opening into another body, another existence, Our minds are also like studios, and it's sort of, you're suddenly in an expanded space. I think so. The working with all of I mean, Hofesh was probably the last really intense communication, and that was an extraordinary. Hofesh Shechter, Israeli choreographer, dancer, somebody who served in the Israeli army, who manages to embody all of the paradoxes, the tragedies, and the kind of vibrancy of this nexus of, you could say, spiritual inspiration and deep destructiveness.
How important has social or political commentary been to you? I mean, many of your pieces do have a resonance.
Yeah, it's good that we've started with. So this is work. When we started, and it's such a good question. What is sculpture good for? You might ask, what is art good for? Well, it's in the process of being commodified, it's become kind of trophy acquisitional object, but it can do unbelievable work. So here is art in a war zone. Here in the time of the Troubles, three works made from armor-plated ordnance, 26 millimeter thick steel of two bodies crucified to each other. The balaclava of the IRA used as the way of entering into this space that identifies a human space in space at large, but through those eyes, you look through the opposite eyes. And these three double-pit bodies were placed in three critical points on the walls of Derry. I won't give you a short history of British colonization, but it happens in the Elizabethan times. Ireland was our first colony, and the Protestant community protected itself by these massive walls. And I chose three positions: one looking back over the Foyle River to the English barracks, another looking onto Bogside, which is where the displaced Catholic community were allowed to live in the marshland that was fundamentally unhealthy and fundamentally unsustainable in terms of agriculture. And then the third place was in front of the Protestant cathedral. And anyway, that image, that terrifying image, was that when we were placing the first work, which was outside St. Augustine's, a Protestant church just within the walls, but next to the stub of a monument that was to the Governor Walker, which was the first Protestant governor of Northern Ireland, based in Derry, known as Londonderry, because of that became the centre of all of the London guilds. And the young people of the Bogside had a day off from school, and there was a crane down below the walls lifting this piece up. And the boys, there was a rumor saying they're putting Governor Walker's statue back up. And the boys started throwing first sticks, then stones, then they smashed all the walls, all the windows of the crane. And the crane driver, Sculptor, he got out of his cab and ran for his life. At that time, there was a small platoon, 12 British soldiers that were occupying with sangers the whole of the walls of Derry at that time. And they took up firing positions. And it was absolutely terrifying. I heard the commander saying, 200 yards, 170 yards, we're going to fire at 100. They were going to fire rubber bullets, but at 14 to 16-year-olds. Anyway, Finbar, who was one of the guys who was helping with the installation, he recognized Derek, a cousin of his that was sort of somehow a bit of a leader of these young boys that had come to kind of, make a riot, basically. And he had a hammer in his hand, and he just ran to the nearest, there are 4 gateways into Derry, ran through the nearest gateway, and he was like Finn McCool. He was sort of like running down the hill with his hammer in his right hand, shouting, "Derek, what the fuck do you think you're doing?" And everybody just stopped. And it was just this really extraordinary moment. Both all of those guys with guns in their hands and all of the boys with sticks and stones in their hands stopped. And it was, the piece was just dangling there with spit dropping off it. And that moment passed. The platoon reordered itself and carried on its march along the walls. The boys dispersed. We put the work in. But that night, the piece that had been propped up outside the Catholic, the Protestant cathedral with big pieces of timber was set light to, and they burnt it. And this was the Protestant community protesting against this thing that they said, this is propaganda for the IRA. We can't have this. We can't have this in our. So anyway, what's that story about? I think it's, can art become a poultice in a community that has been divided on sectarian terms while both being Christian? And can it, in a way, call to itself some of the anger and in a way, distress caused by the situation? And I would say, well, that was proof that could happen. But anyway, this is just an example that we are used to, in a sense, art existing within the safe confines of our fairly self-satisfied cultural context. But there is such a wide field. Art belongs in the world. It is an expression of life in all its diversity within the world, and is best seen in the world. So, when I was growing up as a baby artist, there was an enormous kind of rivalry and desire to be approved, to be validated by this or that important curator, or be collected by this or that important museum. But I just wanted to put the work in the world and then see what happens. And see, so that question, I'm still asking that question, what can art do? And it's a very big question, and I think of it, every work that I make is really asking that question. But the question is best asked in the world.
But Antony, can I ask, we're actually out of time, but I want to ask...
Oh, sorry.
No. But I want to ask a question directly related to that, which is, everything you say is wonderful and inspiring and deeply felt, but there are commercial realities to an artist's life. There are art fairs, there are galleries, there are collectors, there are exhibitions, there are opening parties. How do you feel about that, and how do you reconcile it? Is that for you the price of making this kind of work?
There's a Robin Hood kind of part to all of this. I mean, no, there is no greater, in contradistinction to the rhetoric that I've just been uttering, there is no greater, in a way, honor that you can offer an artist than to agree to live with their work, and often part with significant amounts of money in order to do that. At the same time, I am very, very aware of the constriction in contact with art that happens as a result of really the gatekeeping function of both the museum and the private gallery. But at the same, having said that, I couldn't work without, I've got lovely Mario Cristiani here, and Tadeusz Ropak is standing at the back. They are essential, in a way, engines for me to be able to do what I do, and I am immensely grateful to them for the support, the enormous support that they give. But as I get older, I really feel that I need to use the time that's left to me to make more situated work. And what do I mean by that? I mean work that so far as I'm concerned, the power of sculpture is that it can energize, identify, and open a place. And projects like Another Place on Crosby Beach or The Angel of the North, you could say this is a totally pre-modern notion of what art can do. I mean, you could say it's totemic. So what are the Haida, Tlingit, Kwakwak great poles in northwestern America, in British Columbia? They are statements about, in a way, the long story of the genealogy of humankind within the greater than human world, celebrating belonging and, in a way, our situation in the chain of being. And I guess for me, The Angel of the North, this was a transitional object in psychological terms for a community that had been told that it had no, in a Milton Friedman term, had no right to a future. So I wanted to make an object that with all of them as collaborators, with the shipbuilders, the engineers of the Northeast, to make this thing that would say, no, we do have a right to a future, and this is what we can do. This is what we've learned in the last 250 years, since the Enlightenment, since the Industrial Revolution. And this is going to be, in a way, a sign to the world that we believe in our own future, even if international economics does not. And I mean, it's a rare thing, because you could say, well, the work like this, exposure, this hasn't done the same job. It's a different kind of project. But that possibility to work collectively, to make something that becomes then a focus for hope, as well as an expression, in a way, for me, The Angel of the North is a meditation on our relationship to our extended arm, to our technology. But it has become, and this is not something that you can, as it were, predict. It has become, in a way, a regenerator. And The Angel was followed by the Baltic, then by the Millennium Bridge, then by the Gateshead Music Centre, all of which has sort of fed into a revitalization of the Northeast. I played a very small part in it. I went there with an idea, and as I was walking up this mound that was made out of the destroyed pithead baths of the Lower Tean Colliery, the councillor, Pat, said, Mr. Gormley, what we need is one of your angels. And I was a bit surprised, because I didn't know that anybody knew that I had made this sort of standing body case with extended wings. And I said to him, well, if you're serious, Pat, it'll have to be at least 3 double-decker buses high. And he went a bit quiet. But anyway, I mean, that was just the beginning of the story. But you know, there's another example of a collaboration that I didn't know that he was going to say that. I didn't know that that was possible even, that, you know, something with 54-meter wide wings would be able to withstand winds of 150 miles an hour. But with the help of the engineering department of Newcastle University, we did it. And the thing is still there. I'm amazed that it's still there.
Anthony, I think on that note of the angel with its wings outspread presiding over us, we must stop. But thank you so much for your wonderful eloquence and insights.
Thank you. After you.